Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulullah. So we'll continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's Mizan al-Amal, the Criterion for Action. And the title or the subtitle here is بيان أن طريق السعادة هو العلم والعمل. The path to happiness is knowledge and action. So Imam Al-Ghazali rahmahullah said, you might say, and this is really it's a methodology, this is a style of writing. Imam Ghazali's style. He assumes a question and he responds to the question, and he continues addressing a person. It makes the text, alive, if you will. Addressing أيها الولد, oh my son, oh son, or أيها المسترشد, and sometimes it's in the third person. I have been asked by a brother in religion. Here he says, I am convinced that following the path to happiness is necessary for any intelligent person, and that only an oblivious fool would neglect it. Yet how is one to follow this path if one does not know what it is? How do I ascertain that knowledge and action constitute the path, such that I should pursue them? The answer to this is that there are two ways to ascertain this. The first is general and corresponds to the aforementioned method, namely to consider the common ground among the viewpoints of the three groups. They all agree that success and salvation can only be attained through knowledge and action together. Although they agree that knowledge is nobler than action, and that action essentially complements knowledge and bears it to its proper place. Thus Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to him ascends the good word, and the righteous deed uplifts it. إليه يصعد الكلم الطيب والعمل الصالح يرفعه. The good word, Imam Ghazali comments, returns to knowledge Now, we have the translator said, Jazallah khairan, the good word returns to knowledge at the resurrection. The resurrection it would make the Arabic text al-ba'th والكلم الطيب يرجع إلى العلم عند البعث. The Dar al-Minhaj edition has it والكلم الطيب يرجع إلى العلم عند البحث. Like if you verify, if you discern, if you research, you'll find that the good word would go back. Its root is in knowledge. So we have now, you'd understand if you are reading, this is page 64 of the Dar al-Minhaj edition of Mizan al-Amal. So the good word returns to knowledge at the resurrection. It could be that ultimately will be considered but really it's probably the bahth is more appropriate. But at any rate, this is really the text of Dar Minhaj, and I think this is it is sound. But the translator, if he has seen it, Ba'th, the Tashif, it's possible at any rate. It depends what manuscript, what book he used. And it is what rises and reaches its proper place. Action is like its servant, lifting and carrying it. It shows the lofty status of knowledge. Now, I just would like to insert here that in Al-Bukhari there is a chapter subtitle القول من جنس العمل. So even the like speech is considered as action. Speech is considered as action. Well, the Prophet ﷺ advised us to hold on to our tongues, to control the tongue. And he said in the hadith, when he was asked, are we held accountable on the for what we say? And in the response, he said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we have two texts. وهل يكب الناس على وجوههم, or he said على مناخرهم, on their faces or on their noses. In both cases, it's ultimately the same. يوم القيامة إلا حصائد ألسنتهم. So basically, the harvest of your tongue is basically what pushes one on his hair face, of course, nose, on the day of judgment. So speech is action. In fact, I would go as far as saying not only speech, active listening is also an action. It takes two. It takes two to backbite. So whether it is something good or something bad, you are actively listening, you are participating, you are a participant. You cannot say this, the other person was backbiting, I didn't. No, you are part of it because you listened, you did not stop him, you did not stop her. The first group, meaning those who adhere to the outward meaning of the revelation as the masses would understand it, have no doubt that salvation is connected to knowledge and action. One could explain this endlessly. The Sufis and philosophers who believe in Allah and the last day also agree in general terms that happiness is found in knowledge and action. Now, in Arabic, and I think this is in Arabic, it is والصوفية والفلاسفة والذين آمنوا بالله واليوم الآخر على الجملة، وإن اختلفوا في الكيفية كلهم متفقون على أن السعادة في العلم والعبادة. طيب. How this differs from the English. The Sufis and philosophers who believe in Allah. No, the Sufis, instead of and, make it a comma. The Sufis, philosophers, comma, and all those who believe in Allah and the last day also agree. That's على الجملة. So they are the third category. So you have the Sufis, number two, the philosophers, number three, الذين والذين. If it were an attribute or so if the phrase were to describe the Sufis and the philosophers, it would say والصوفية والفلاسفة الذين آمنوا بالله واليوم الآخر. No, here say والذين آمنوا. So it's a third general category. But the point is كلهم متفقون على السعادة في العلم والعبادة. All of them agree that happiness is found in knowledge and action, although they might disagree about the particular modality of this and the details of knowledge and action. Now, to hesitate despite disagreement would be sheer folly. والتوقف مع هذا الاتفاق حمق. If a man is sick and all the books and statements of the doctors in all their differing types agree that this illness is best treated with refrigerants, the patient would have to be cognitively deficient to hesitate about their advice, while any person of sound mind would be quick to heed. There may also be another way to ascertain the truth of the matter besides this, not by conforming to the majority, but by ascertaining the reality of the ailment and the reason why refrigerants are suitable for treating it. If the patient is able to discover this by independent study, he will become a person of vision and ascend above the confines of conformity and blind following. To the rank of insight. Thus, the Sufis and some other groups claim that it is possible to reach cognizance of this truth through insight and realization. The path to this, now we need to, again, I think there is something about the Arabic difference between the Arabic and English. The path to this is that you recognize the reality of death and how it means the end of the instrument's usefulness, not the non-existence of its user. Then you discern that the happiness, pleasure, and comfort of each thing lies in it reaching the perfection that is specific to it. Then you discern that the perfection specific to man is the perception of the reality of intelligibles as they actually are, not the estimations and sensations that he shares with other animals. So the text we have two phrases in Arabic. وذلك بأن تعرف ماهية النفس وذلك بأن تعرف حقيقة الموت. And this might be the reason for the first phrase, it seems not translated. It could happen because of the similarity of the wording. The second is about recognize the reality of death, but here not only the paragraph begins with the path to this is that you recognize the reality of death. So there is another whole phrase that comes before that. وذلك بأن تعرف ماهية النفس. The path to this is that you recognize the reality of the soul, the essence of the soul. This phrase is not there at all in the English. So I will I think people should pay attention. It's an important. So it's ماهية النفس first and then ماهية or حقيقة الموت. Then you discern that the happiness, pleasure, and comfort of each thing lies in it reaching the perfection that is specific to it. Kamal al-Khas. Then you discern that the perfection specific to man is the perception of the reality of intelligibles as they actually are, not the estimations and sensations that he shares with other animals. Then you discern that the soul is inherently thirsty for this and naturally prepared for it, and that he is only distracted from it by his occupation with appetites and accidents of the body when they overcome him. But if he can tame them, conquer them, free himself from their bondage, and put them to his own service, then engage in reflection and contemplation upon the dominion of heaven and earth, and indeed upon the dominion of his own soul and the wonders created within them, he will reach his own specific perfection. He will be happy in this world, for happiness has no meaning other than the soul attaining the perfection that is possible for it, although the degrees of perfection are beyond counting. However, However, he will not feel that pleasure as long as he is impeded in this world by sense, imagination, and the accidents of the soul. If someone is presented with a delicious meal, but his sense of taste is numbed, he will not get the full measure of enjoyment from it. Death, then, is the ultimate cure for numbness. I once heard a senior member of a Sufi lodge say that the wayfarer to Allah sees paradise in this world, and the highest garden is with him in his heart if he could only reach it. Okay, maybe there is something different from the Arabic. The this this world entails distractions, obstacles, uh, the sensibles, as if we Imam Ghazali compares this to a person uh, who has been offered, exposed to the most delicious um, um, most delicious taste, but the his taste buds are numb. Once, I think this phrase is not there. فيزول الخضر فيشعر باللذة المفرطة. Once this numbness is disappears, it is removed, then he feels extreme pleasure. He will not get the full measure of enjoyment from it. He gets the extreme pleasure if that numbness is removed, and then we have the death as the resembling the removal of numbness, because uh, you are already on the other side. You see reality for what it is. And Imam Ghazali, more than once in his writings, he refers to death and the Quranic uh, concept of sight becoming keen. فَبَصَرُكَ الْيَوْمَ حَدِيدٌ. Your sight becomes keen uh, as of the moment of death. The way to reach it is to detach oneself from the ties of the world and to turn one's aspiration entirely towards reflection on divine matters. Like while you are still here, while you are still on earth, you can, you should attempt to reach your own perfection until it is unveiled by divine inspiration. This is done by purifying the soul from all these pollutants. To attain this is to be happy, and action is what helps one attain it. This group then claims that one ascertain the correspondence of knowledge and action to happiness through contemplation. What they say is sound, and they further claim that this can only be achieved through struggle and discipline. As Allah says, those who strive for us, we surely guide them upon our paths. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Therefore, Imam Ghazali comments, therefore you must strive and devote yourself to the pursuit, and perhaps the reality of the matter will be revealed to you, whether by negation or affirmation, بالنفي أو الإثبات. The agreement of the three groups ought to be sufficient reason for you to engage in the pursuit of knowledge and action, provided your purpose in questioning is not simply to argue, but rather to seek success. An ill person who seeks treatment, medication, has no desire for argument, and he would be delighted if all doctors of every stripe agreed on how best to treat him. An overview of the purification of the soul and its faculties and traits. بيان تزكية النفس وقواها واختلافها على سبيل المثال والإجمال. You might say, so if you say, I am convinced that engaging in knowledge and action is necessary, but there are many kinds of knowledge and of action too, and they differ in type and in measure. It is not enough to say that an illness may be treated with refrigerants if one does not know which type of refrigerant and what measure and what time to administer it, and whether to administer it constantly or intermittently, and other such essential details. It is necessary to explain to type, then the quantity, then the method of engagement with it. No, so that's if one asks, if one says this, the answer from Imam Ghazali now, no, then that when it comes to your question, people are divided into two groups. There are those who are content with blind conformity, we talk about taqlid, and taqlid a'ma really, blind conformity, and feel no need to research for themselves, but will readily take the path outlined for them by the authority they follow. Then there are those who are not content to conform as the patient does to the doctor, but rather aspire to be doctors themselves. Now, this is a weighty matter indeed, requiring much time, and the requirements of this matter are fulfilled by precious few people across the ages. Nevertheless, We shall explain to you what can elevate you above the confines of blind conformity and guide you towards the right path. If divine grace assists you and the desire for fulfillment is aroused within your soul, you may attain it through struggle. Now, you cannot recognize what you seek without first recognizing your own soul and its faculties and special properties. How could you go about keeping the company of Zaid without even knowing who Zaid is? Now, in Arabic, فكيف يشتغل بمعالجة زيد من لا يعرف زيدا. The, the example from the very beginning of this, in fact, it began before this subtitle, is about medicine. So rather than keeping the company of Zaid, it is about treating, curing, curing Zaid. So that, I would like you to pay attention. This is now on page 69. فكيف يشتغل بمعالجة زيد من لا يعرف زيدا. So it's not keeping company. Wallahu alam. To struggle is to treat the soul by purifying it so that it may attain success. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, prosperous is the one who purifies it, and ruined is the one who obscures it. قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها. The one, Imam Ghazali comments, the one who does not know what a garment is could not possibly cleanse it of its dirt. Given the great importance of knowledge of the soul, Allah spoke of it grandly and attributed it to Himself by way of singling it out and honoring it. Thus He says, I shall create a human from clay. Soon I have shaped him and breathed into him of my spirit. إني خالق بشرا من طين فإذا سويته ونفخت فيه من روحي. Imam Ghazali comments, because we have two elements here. He says, with this he declares that man, he, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, declares that man was created from a body that perceives with the eyesight and the soul that perceives with the intellect and insight, not the physical senses. He attributed man's body to clay and his spirit to himself. By spirit, he meant what we mean by soul. Signaling to folk of insight that the human soul is a divine matter, greater and higher than the terrestrial sensory body. Let me read and I will go back. Thus he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they ask you about the spirit, say the spirit is from the command of my Lord. ويسألونك عن الروح قل الروح من أمر ربي. Now, while it sounds in English, it is okay. By spirit, in inverted commas, he meant what we mean by soul. وأراد بالروح ما نعنيه بالنفس. وأراد بالروح ما نعنيه بالنفس. Probably if we insert the two words next to the English ones in transliterated form might assist. So we'll use the word ruh next to spirit and nafs next to soul. so that there will be no, because in the yep, that's only a suggestion to clarify it. It is said of Allah's revealed scriptures, one of Allah's revealed scriptures contained the following: know yourself, O man. This is not Quranic, of course. Know yourself, O man, and you shall know your Lord. And there is here Imam Al-Ghazali says that it's a hadith. وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم, it seems obviously that this is not a hadith, but it's something that is pretty common. أعرفكم بنفسه أعرفكم بربه. Imam Nawawi said that it is not a hadith, ليس بثابت, and there are those who said that it is not known مرفوعا, meaning to it does not reach the Prophet ﷺ in the chain of narrators. And one can dwell on the meaning without even considering that it is a hadith, but you can think about, you see yourself that you are mortal, and then you would know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not. He is the living, He is the first, the last, and nothing is co-eternal with Him, because He created everything. You see yourself in need of things. You need air, you need food, you need drink. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need anything of His creation. So maybe this example would shed light on how you would move from knowing yourself. Your knowledge is incomplete, in fact cumulative, all humanity's knowledge from Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam until the very last person on earth. The cumulative knowledge of all is still short. It is وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. So you know that your knowledge is incomplete, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is omniscient. Your power is limited. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is omnipotent. This might explain why you know yourself, then you'd know. The more you know yourself, the more you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But again, it's not a hadith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, be not like those who forget Allah, so He makes them forget their own souls. وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. Imam Ghazali commented on this by saying, indicating that the two are inseparable, and that to forget either one of them amounts to forgetting the other. Thus he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we shall show them our signs on the horizons and within themselves. سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم. And says, and in your souls will you not then see? وفي أنفسكم أفلا تبصرون. By this he could not mean merely the outer appearance of the body, for even dumb animals can see this, to say nothing of people. And this call to see the signs in the on the horizons, in the universe, in nature, in the cosmos, it's also a call for the scientific enterprise to thrive. I mean, those who understood the Islamic worldview, so much motivation there, seeking knowledge. Knowledge is you'll see the signs that point to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as creator, and knowledge, as you can see, or knowledge also is power. I mean, it is it's extremely problematic that a few years ago the UNDP report about the Arab world still talking about the number of the illiterate in the Arab world. It's almost one half of the people, different levels of illiteracy, and two-thirds of the half are women. Two-thirds of the half are women. How you could basically have this scientific enterprise? How could you basically